The Forest's Debt, a haunting African folk tale. In the heart of a dense Kenyan forest, a young boy named Juma sets out on a lonely journey under the cloak of night. The forest is alive with sounds, rustling leaves, distant animal calls, and the whisper of the wind. But Juma's resolve is stronger than his fear. He carries a basket filled with food for his ailing mother, and the weight of responsibility pushes him forward. As he walks, the moonlight filters through the thick canopy, creating a tapestry of light and shadow that dances across his path. Each step he takes is cautious. The forest feels both familiar and foreign, its secrets hidden in the darkness. Juma recalls tales told by the elders about the spirits that guard the woods, and he wonders if they are watching him now. Midway through his journey, Juma encounters a fork in the path. To the left, a narrow trail seems to lead deeper into the forest, shrouded in darkness. To the right, a wider pathway glimmers faintly under the moonlight. Trusting his instincts, he chooses the right path, all the while whispering a prayer for safety. As he continues, he faces various challenges. A sudden rustle in the bushes makes him freeze, and a fallen branch nearly trips him. Finally, after what feels like hours, Juma reaches a small clearing where he finds a group of children playing. They invite him to join them, but he remembers his mission. With a grateful heart, he strides past them, emerging from the forest just as dawn breaks, illuminating his path home. Juma arrives, breathless but triumphant, with the food in hand, ready to care for his mother. Juma set the basket down on the wooden table, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. His mother, frail and wrapped in a thin, colorful shuka, stirred weakly on the mat. "Juma," she whispered, her voice as faint as the breeze that rustled through their hut. "You have come back." "Yes, Mama," Juma said, kneeling beside her. "I brought food." He carefully unwrapped the bundle, revealing maize, dried fish, and wild herbs. His mother's sunken eyes filled with tears of gratitude. But Juma noticed something. Her gaze lingered on him, as if she saw something he did not. "You walked through the forest, didn't you?" she asked. Her voice carried a note of fear that made Juma pause. He nodded hesitantly. "The spirits, did they follow you?" she pressed, clutching his arm with surprising strength for her frail state. Juma froze. "I don't know," he whispered, the memory of the children in the clearing flashing vividly in his mind. He thought of their laughter, so carefree, yet strangely hollow. His mother sighed deeply and let go of his arm. "They do not forget, my son. They do not forget." Before Juma could ask what she meant, she slipped into a restless sleep, murmuring words he couldn't quite understand. Later that day, Juma returned to the forest, drawn by an unshakable curiosity. He retraced his steps, each turn of the path bringing back memories of the previous night. When he reached the clearing where the children had played, the air felt different, heavy and charged. The laughter he had heard was gone, replaced by an eerie silence. As he stepped into the clearing, his eyes caught something glinting in the morning light. Kneeling down, he found an object half buried in the soft earth. A small wooden figurine, intricately carved to resemble a child, with a mischievous grin. He picked it up, feeling its smooth surface. The moment his fingers closed around it, a whispering sound filled his ears. It wasn't the wind, it was voices, soft, overlapping, and unintelligible. Juma's heart raced, but he couldn't let go of the figurine. It felt warm, almost alive. Suddenly, The bushes behind him rustled. Juma spun around, his breath catching in his throat. A shadow darted between the trees, too quick to be human. "You shouldn't have come back." A deep voice rumbled from nowhere and everywhere at once. Juma bolted from the clearing, his legs carrying him faster than he thought possible. When he finally stumbled out of the forest and back into the safety of the open fields, he looked down at his hand. The figurine was still there, but now its expression had changed. The mischievous grin was gone, replaced by a sad, almost pleading look. That night, as he sat by his mother's side, she woke with a start. Her eyes darted around the room before landing on him. "You brought something back, didn't you?" she asked sharply. Juma hesitated, then held out the figurine. His mother's face paled. "You must return it," she said, her voice trembling. "Tonight, before the moon is high." "But why?" Juma asked, clutching the figurine protectively. "It is not yours to keep," a new voice said. Juma turned to see an old woman standing in the doorway. Her eyes were sharp, her presence commanding. She wore layers of beads and charms, and her staff was adorned with feathers and bones. "Who are you?" Juma asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am Nyanya Wema," the woman said, "the keeper of the forest's secrets. The spirits allowed you to pass last night, but by taking what belongs to them, you have angered them." Nyanya Wema led Juma back into the forest, under the pale light of the moon. The figurine grew heavier in his hand with every step, as if resisting his grip. They arrived at the clearing, now bathed in an ethereal glow. The air crackled with unseen energy, and shadows danced unnaturally at the edges of the trees. "Place it where you found it," Nyanya Wema instructed. Juma hesitated, feeling a strange attachment to the figurine, but the whispers began again, louder this time, their tone insistent. With trembling hands, he placed the figurine back in the earth. The moment it touched the ground, the clearing changed. The shadows retreated, the whispers ceased, and the air became still. But then a deep, resonant voice echoed through the forest. "You have returned what was taken," it said, "but the debt is not yet paid." Before Juma could ask what the voice meant, Nyanya Wema grasped his shoulder. "Run," she whispered. Juma sprinted back to his home, the forest seeming to close in behind him. When he burst into the hut, his mother was waiting, her expression a mix of relief and dread. "What did they say?" she asked. "They said, 'The debt is not yet paid,'" Juma replied. His mother's face darkened. "Then this is only the beginning," she murmured. In the days that followed, strange occurrences began to plague the village. Livestock went missing, crops withered overnight, and people spoke of hearing laughter in the forest, laughter that was neither human nor animal. Juma's dreams were haunted by visions of the children, their faces shifting and changing, their voices calling his name. And always in the background was the deep voice of the forest, repeating the same words. The debt is not yet paid. Nyanya Wema visited him again, this time bringing with her a tattered scroll. On it was an ancient prophecy about a boy who would awaken the forest's spirits and either restore balance or bring ruin. "The choice is yours, Juma," she said. "The spirits have marked you. Your courage saved your mother, but your path is far from over. To settle the debt, you must face the forest again and uncover its greatest secret." Juma sat in stunned silence, staring at the ancient scroll spread before him. The symbols glowed faintly, as if alive, shifting and twisting under Nyanya Wema's watchful eyes. "You have disturbed the balance, child," she murmured, tracing a gnarled finger over the parchment. The spirits of the forest do not forget. The debt must be paid. Juma swallowed hard. He had only picked up a small wooden figurine. How could that change his fate? "What do they want from me?" he whispered. Nyanya looked at him with something between pity and respect. "That is for them to decide. But first, you must listen." She lifted a bowl filled with dark water and placed it before him. "Look into the water, Juma. See what has been hidden from you." Juma hesitated, then leaned over the bowl. At first, he saw only his reflection, wide, fearful eyes staring back. Then, the water rippled. Shapes formed. Shadows twisted. He saw the forest, but different. The trees pulsed as though breathing, their branches moving unnaturally. The children from the clearing were there, only they no longer looked like children. Their eyes were hollow voids, their laughter now a chorus of whispers. The figurine lay at the center, glowing faintly, and surrounding it were tall, faceless figures draped in tattered robes. Then, the scene changed. A great tree, larger than any Juma had ever seen, stood at the heart of the forest. Its bark was carved with symbols, its roots wrapped around something buried beneath. A whisper rose from the vision. "Return what was stolen, or become one of us." Juma gasped and jerked back, spilling the bowl's contents onto the ground. He turned to Nyanya, his voice shaking. "What does it mean?" The old woman sighed, closing her eyes for a long moment. "It means, Juma, that you are part of a story far older than you realize. And if you do not make it right, the forest will take you." A cold wind howled through Nyanya hut, snuffing out the oil lamp in an instant. Juma's breath caught in his throat as the shadows lengthened unnaturally, stretching toward him like grasping fingers. Nyanya grabbed his arm. "The forest knows you have seen the truth. We must go, now." She moved with surprising speed for her age, pushing open the door. The night outside was no longer still. The trees trembled as if whispering, their branches clawing at the sky. The distant laughter of the ghostly children echoed through the darkness. Juma ran, his heart pounding like a drum. He clutched the wooden figurine to his chest as he followed Nyanya into the forest. The path twisted and turned, yet somehow he knew where to go. The vision had shown him the place, the great tree, the buried secret. As they neared the heart of the forest, the air thickened. Juma felt an unseen force pressing against him, as if warning him to turn back. The ground beneath his feet shuddered. A low, guttural growl rumbled through the trees. Then they appeared. The faceless figures from his vision stepped out of the darkness. Cloaked in tattered robes, their hollow voids of eyes locked onto Juma. Their voices overlapped, 1,000 whispers woven into one. The debt must be paid. Juma's knees threatened to buckle, but Nyanya stood firm beside him. "They will not take you yet," she declared. "The choice is still yours." Summoning every ounce of courage, Juma stepped forward and held out the figurine. "I didn't mean to take it. I only found it lying in the dirt." The whispers intensified. The wind roared through the trees. The ground split open beneath the great tree's roots, revealing a hollow space beneath. Juma knew what he had to do. With shaking hands, he placed the figurine inside the hollow. The moment it touched the earth, the forest let out a deep sigh, like a beast exhaling after holding its breath for too long. The figures remained still. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, they faded, dissolving into mist. The laughter of the ghostly children softened into the wind. The tree settled. The ground sealed itself once more. The forest was at peace. Juma fell to his knees, gasping. Nyanyawema placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. You have restored the balance, Juma, but never forget, the forest watches always. As the first light of dawn pierced through the trees, Juma turned back toward his village. He had entered the forest as a boy. Now he walked out as something else, a guardian of its secrets.